What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are in the basement at Brooklyn Bazaar, or as I like to call it, the Bat Cave, and we are here with Hyperion of Cell. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. Your latest record is Ancient Incantations of Xarbos. You just want to talk about how, like, the making of this record was, the recording, tracking, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, like, this record, we put so much time into it. It was really big for us. It's essentially following the concept. The concept is one big thing from the first album and second album, where essentially it's a big sci-fi comic book I wrote. And it's supposed to continue on every single album. And this one is a very, very cool part of their concept. Essentially, this is about, like, these two races fighting against each other over like thousands of years for power, and the one race is like living off the land essentially as like a pagan kind of they're one with their planet, and then the other ones are like really rich and greedy, and they're trying to essentially eradicate them so they could gain more power essentially. And with that concept, I felt it was a really good metaphor for how the indigenous people had to deal with colonialism and everything in the past. And man, it's some crazy concepts within that album, and the recording process was like super fun. Like reamping was super fun. I love doing reamping. That's just one of my personal favorite parts of recording. The actual recording part just drives me crazy.
What I find unique is you have these stories and these concepts behind it. Did you think of this concept before writing music for it, and maybe the concept? So did the concept determine the outcome of the music, or did you always want to know you wanted to do like this sort of like progressive black metal style to go along with it?
Yeah, like that's always kind of been in me in my writing and stuff, and I picked it up over the years from just what I love, right? And I used to do a lot more death metal, but like I found I always went more blackened ways with my riffs and everything. So yeah, I mean, as far as the concept connecting into the music, like I like to write the music to the concept, but I do have freedom where like if I write a good riff, I'll fit it properly in the right spot, right? So yeah, I don't know, I've always been a big fan of black metal ever since like, I don't know, like middle school, high school, around there, where it's just always been a part of my life. It's probably the most cathartic way you can be on stage, just letting out all the emotion, everything. It's awesome.
There you go. One thing I'm curious, you said this is the second record to determine to demonstrate this story, right?
Yeah.
So would in order for a listener to get the full concept of the story, should they listen to your first record before listening to the second record? Like, is it like a movie series, or can they just come from any angle? You
can come from any angle, because like the first record that just opened up the galaxy essentially. So it's like the storyline is based around these beings called the Erebothians, and they essentially like have blown up their own planet from just destroying it, just too much greed and just like pollution and everything, and then they just nuke their own planet eventually, and they moved to their own planet, to their own moon. And that's why the album's called Frozen Moon of Erebos. So it's about them essentially living there and then going planet to planet with different stations of elites. And they essentially take their DNA from different beings on every planet. So in the second album, you could actually see in the corner of the album, there's the Erebothian ship kind of just floating above the planet. And they're observing this like big like race war on this planet. And they're waiting till it gets like snuffed out so they can take the DNA from these people.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Are you trying to engage the listener into the story, or could the album also maybe be open to interpretation? Because I feel like that what you're writing about is relatable to historical events as well.
Yeah, it definitely is open to interpretation in some songs. Like I like to write a lot of stuff that has to do with like about my life and what I view and how I experience things. So like for example, All I See Is Them off the album, like the new one, that is about a friend of mine that has schizophrenia. He's been struggling with that his whole life, and within that story and that concept, it continues on with one of those aliens, the Zarbonites. He has schizophrenia, and within the song essentially follows that about him going in and out of the shadow realm, because when you have schizophrenia, a lot of people they see shadow people and stuff like that. Like it's super common, and he sees them a lot. And I thought a cool way to immortalize it and bring light to it, to mental health and such, is to put it in a song. So yeah, there's a lot of songs like that within the two albums that you'll see that it's in the storyline, but there's a metaphor behind it, or there's something more to it. You got to like look further,
If somebody were to listen to this album, on like a shuffle setting on their phone, it's not like it's going too out of order to the point where they won't get the context.
No, you can like listen to it in any way you want, but it's probably preferable if you do go front to back, because then you can hear it in the way it should be. Like the way we arranged it and wrote it. It's like when you go to that intro track and then connect in the first track, it's a very cool. It's the journey, essentially getting to the end, where the whole point of this storyline is for them to overthrow the rich race, essentially, and that's what they do in the ending of this whole storyline. They get the orb from this like different. Essentially, they open a wormhole into this dimension called the Frost King's world, and they take that orb essentially to use it against those people, against the rich people.
Being that this record just came out, I'm probably asking this question way too early on, but I'd imagine that with the making of each record, you already have a vision on how you want to take the story even further, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I definitely want to expand way more, like different planets and different. I want to like do. I was thinking about even doing like an EP where it's just on a spaceship itself, and it's like a lot more touching on mental health and within people's mania and all that stuff. Like I think that would be really cool. If you ever seen the movie Pandorum or something like that, that's a cool movie where like two guys are stuck on this ship and they're trying to remember what happened to the ship, and it's like it's somewhere in the galaxy. I have no idea where it is, and they're freaking out, and they discover a bunch of different stuff in the ship. And yeah, I like love concepts like that have to do with psychology and stuff. Like just that aspect really interests me. So yeah.
When it comes to like writing a story, because you mentioned that this is like a comic series that you work with, like when it comes to writing a story, is it a similar creative energy as it to writing music, or in a way is kind of like a separate mind frame?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I don't know how to answer that. It's sorry, what was the question again?
If there's like a similar creative energy into writing like a story versus writing music as well. If it's a similar element or
honestly like when I write this music, I feel like it means more to me than writing just another song. Because like the amount of times like I have a hardcore band on the side, and when we write music, it's like just let's be hard, we're just trying to like play that type of music. You know what I mean? You're not actually unleashing it and letting it out, and letting your emotion out. And I feel with this band I can do that, and it feels more fluid and feels more proper for me, where I'm not forcing myself to do riffs. I can literally just go, oh, there we go. Yeah. And it's nice and
like
easier.
More natural.
Yeah, totally. And within this band, I definitely can say like we try to tie in as many subgenres as we can without being too overdone with it. Yeah, like you're not gonna hear one part and just halt and go into another part. I make everything flow. But yeah, that's the fun of music like that. You gotta catch people's interest, not blast the whole time and not just doom the whole time, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I have two more questions for you.
Yeah, shoot.
Being Hyperion of Cell, what I find unique is you have all these aliases in black metal, whether it's Nurgle or Faust, or Orion or whatever. As a character, this is clearly a character that you portray on stage. Is the character that you portray on stage like an extension of yourself, or are you going completely outside of yourself?
Yeah, like if you talk to me as a normal person, I'm pretty happy and outgoing, and I'm like I look like I'm not sad, but everyone's got that that inside.
I've seen the promo pics for your band, and you make Lords of Chaos look like the Teletubbies.
Thanks, man. Yeah, with this character, I'm able to again be cathartic and let out my sadness, my anger towards everything in the world, and just portray it on stage and let it out. And I find that having an alias to release with is so good and healthy. It's so good for you, and it's like the best feeling in the world when you get to just not be yourself and just act, and you'll feel great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is, I've interviewed so many bands from Canada, but you are the first band from Winnipeg, I believe, that I interviewed.
Cool.
And but I've heard from talking to all these bands that there's an awesome metal scene in Canada all in general. Like I interviewed Big Brave, I interviewed Threat Signal, I interviewed The Agonists, like I interviewed Anvil, like so many bands from Canada. But I also heard that like Montreal is very different from like Edmonton, different from Winnipeg, different from Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like, is there a scene in Winnipeg that you're active
Oh
in?
yeah. The Winnipeg scene, like we've toured across Canada a bunch of times now. Where like I've kind of got a grasp on how the scenes are, and obviously Montreal is amazing. It's always gonna have a scene, but it's very clicky, right? Like, there's a lot of like just only black metal shows, only death metal shows, blah blah blah, right? But then like you go to Winnipeg, there's a show all the time, and it'll be mixed. You know, they sometimes you'll see shows where like it won't even be like it'll be not just metal, but metal, punk, rock, like that. But it's cool. It pulls in different people. And our metal scene is super strong. We have a lot of consistent good bands. Like, they're always working hard, and it's cold there, right? So we sit inside and we just write like crazy and, you know, hang out with everyone and get that out. And then we do all our touring after the winter and, you know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of good bands from there, man. Like Ken Mode comes out of there. Comeback Kid, a good hardcore band.
Oh, really? They're from there?
Yeah. And a lot of rock bands, like famous rock bands, are from there. Propaganda, a good punk band from there.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we actually jam in the same spaces. That was kind of cool. You get to hear sets of Propaganda down the hall.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. It's amazing how many bands come from there. Very talented city. It's
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we love it when Canadian bands come here because we know we're getting the bang for our buck.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you. Appreciate
Is there just anything else you would like to promote for Cell for this brand new record cycle?
Check out our record on Spotify and all the streaming services, YouTube. We'll have our Bandcamp store up pretty soon once I get back from tour next week. And catch us if you can on the rest of our dates. And we'll be planning another tour for 2020.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Everybody, we are here with Hyperion of Cell, Ancient Incantations of Xarbos. I got it right. I worked so hard to memorize it. Be sure to pick that up. Buy it now while supplies last forever. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.